So I was reading your story a bit through your website,
Yeah.
and so it sounds like you've been doing your no starch diet for about 6 years now. Is that right? Or was your
Yeah.
diagnosis
Yeah.
6 years ago?
It's all the same,
All the
basically.
same.
My diagnosis, and basically, like a month later, I was cold turkey cut everything out, and yeah. So I was diagnosed. I think it was in October of 2019. Then,
Oh, right before
um,
COVID.
right before COVID, which actually was super helpful for me because nobody was eating out, and I was eating out anyways. Um, I think there was a point. So I did only chicken and broccoli and salt and olive oil for, I mean, it was a few months, honestly. I think there was one point where Costco was out of broccoli, and I was like, "What? That's all I can eat."
So was that your breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Was it the same
Correct.
meal, same
Correct.
meal 3 times a day, every day?
Correct.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
for months on end. You know what? I was really desperate. I had twin infants and a 3-year-old, and I was so stiff and inflamed, I couldn't even at night, I couldn't lift my twins out of their cribs, and, I was just in a lot of pain, and I had about an 8-month wait, before I could see a rheumatologist, and I was like, "What am I gonna do for 8 months if I have no med?"
That's a
It's
long wait.
long. Yeah, so I was like, instead of just sitting here and waiting, the appointment will come, but instead of sitting here and waiting, I'm just gonna try something. So I went online and did all my online research, um, and really just went by anecdotal information. And because there's not a lot of studies on the starch-free diet, there's not a lot of scientific evidence, and so I was desperate enough to try anything, and so that's why I stumbled upon this information, and people said, "Well, you can just cut out starch." And I thought, well, that's fine. But then other people said, well, some people still react to, I don't know, like red meat and nuts and seeds and dairy and nightshades and all that. And I was like, I'm not starting this and getting to the eight month mark and not having done everything I could to feel better at that point. So I was like, I guess I'm just cutting it all. And at that point, it sounds super boring, and it was really a very boring diet. But my brain was so overloaded with little kids that I needed to feed and a house that I needed to run that in some ways it was just easy. All I ever needed to have in my home was chicken and broccoli, and the brain
Yeah.
work was done. And it was just um, a matter of, yeah, it was mind over matter, really is what it was. I nourished my body. It was just a time of healing and getting rid of anything that could possibly inflame me. Um, and so I did that for a long time. Now, that's not necessarily what I would recommend for other people,
Hmm.
um, but I did, and um, and I guess it worked because I feel like I am a success story now. But I would next time, if I had to do this all over again, or if I had to tell other people what would I change, it would definitely be a matter of like cut out all the starches for sure, and cut out things that often can be inflammatory for people with autoimmune issues, like dairy. For a lot of people, that will be an issue, and nuts and seeds maybe for a time. Um, but there's still a lot of starch-free things, like vegetables, like, I could have added celery and lettuce and herbs,
Yeah.
and, like, all those things are like, "Oh my goodness," I really deprived myself of a lot that it wasn't necessary to that extent. I think for months on end, like a year, I didn't drink tea because I was like, "Oh, what if there's some starch infusing into my water?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "That's crazy." I mean, the stress that I put on myself to not consume those things probably was more detrimental than just consuming those things anyways. So,
Right. Just
um,
taking the
I
chance of a very tiny bit of starch probably would have
yeah,
been less
yeah,
negatively impactful than
totally.
all the stress of, oh, is there
Yes.
like, do I need to iodine test the tea bag and make sure there's
Right.
no different colors? And
Exactly. Yeah, and I probably would have tested starchy, and just shouldn't have cared, really, because stress is a huge factor in healing and feeling better, right? And so just finding that balance, I think, was important. For me, it took a long time to feel better even after making those dietary changes. I think there was a time when um, I went to go see a functional doctor. I just felt like, oh my goodness, I'm reading all this online, and
Mm,
that's not, I should probably hear from a professional what would be the right thing to do. So I went to go see, um, then it was a functional doctor, and she's like, "Well, you really should take these supplements. I know they're starchy, but sometimes it is like one step or two steps forward, one step back, and that's just part of the journey." And I took those supplements for uh like a month, and
mhm.
I felt horrible. I felt horrible. I felt like I was so inflamed. I was in so much pain, and so eventually I said, I'm just gonna stop them, and I'm just not gonna go to the doctor anymore, the functional doctor. And then I just decided to do it on my own. So that was a step back for me when I introduced starchy supplements again.
Mhm.
I wish I hadn't done that. And then just again, the stress of like my father-in-law passed away during those first few months on the diet
Oh
as well.
man,
The
sorry to
stress
hear
of
that.
that. Yeah, well, you know what? It was just the stress of all of that. It just proved to me that stress is a huge factor in the healing process. It can really hold you back. So again, finding that balance between yes, the starch-free diet, but also how am I actually going to make this work in my life, right? Yeah.
Right. I think the integration is definitely, especially at the beginning, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah,
I
for
mean, going
sure.
from not, or, for me, I'd maybe eat out once a week with my girlfriend or my friends. Um, just eating's a very social thing. And
Yeah.
in a way, once I got established on the no starch diet, kind of like you were saying, there's a, it's nice and also sometimes not so nice how simple it is.
Mm.
When you open my fridge, it's the most plain looking thing ever. There's hardly any condiments. Any of them that are in there, my girlfriend's are not even mine.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
one little shelf on the fridge that'll have
Yeah.
whatever meat I'm thawing for the day out of the
Yeah.
freezer,
Yeah.
some fruit that I've got in there, and just the basics. My
Yeah.
seasoning cabinet is just salt.
Yeah.
Everything's so simple, and it can be a bit monotonous at times, but
Mm,
it's also kind of takes a little bit of stress out of it because there's never really any complicated meals to make.
totally.
There's new ways to make food.
Um,
You were the one who recommended to me, I believe, the take your leftover chicken and crisp it up in like a skillet. And
I still love
I've
it.
done that. It's surprisingly good. My girlfriend was actually impressed with it. She was like, "Wow, this is kind of like a chicken nugget like thing." And I'm like, "Oh, it's close."
My kids love it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I normally have plenty of chicken to get rid of because
Yeah.
every week I try to stay on the broth every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. It's
As
amazing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
as long as I can keep it in production every week. Sometimes I slack off for a couple days and we go a couple
Yeah.
days without it, but
Yeah.
it most definitely helps.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
When you first started your diet, what was the timeline of your symptoms? Did you feel any good relief in the first month or two, or was it 3, 4 months and then there was just a sharp decrease in symptoms, or
Yeah.
was it just kind of gradual over time?
Yeah. Well, for sure the first month. Okay, so I should preface this with I started this in November. Honestly, it's kind of a terrible time to start because like right before Christmas, all the Christmas parties, it was just like, oh my goodness, what did I do? Um, but anyways, I started in November and I was used to a standard North American diet. Like it was all the grains. I love bread and all
Yeah.
those things. And so cutting that out, honestly, I felt worse for the first month than I did before starting the diet. I was in a lot of pain. I was stiff. I was miserable. Just I don't know, like emotionally, it takes a toll sometimes, especially when everybody
Yeah.
else is eating festive foods and in social situations. Even now, sometimes it can sting because
Yeah.
uh yeah, you just can't always participate in the same way, right? So that first month it was hard. I was not doing so well. Um and I seriously thought about, like, just throwing in the towel and calling it a day, but then I was like, "Man, if I do that, then I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and I'm gonna have to do the whole 3 weeks all over again, the whole first 3 weeks, right? And I
Yeah.
have to do all this misery all over again. So either I stick with it or I start over, and I didn't wanna do that because 'cause I'd been so miserable and I didn't want to relive
Yeah.
that. So I guess, okay, it was really just one day at a time at that point. Um, so I kept going, and then, yes, I started seeing the functional doctor, and that kinda set me back. Honestly, for me, I know other people have much quicker success stories, but for me, it was very much, not noticeable improvement until, like, 6 months later.
Yeah.
It was just the stress of the starchy supplements and, the just the my father-in-law passing away. I think it just took a long time to feel better. Um, but before 8 months, I was feeling a lot better because at the 8-month mark, I did go see the rheumatologist, and, she said, well, you look to be doing fine. So she's like, it looks like you've got it all under control. And so I see evidence of inflammation still, and there's definitely past evidence and some damage, but on the MRI. But in terms of how you're feeling right now, she asked me, how are you doing? And apparently I said, I'm doing fine. I don't think I need meds. So
Yeah.
8 months in, I felt good enough to decline biologics. So yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Yes, and I haven't regretted it. She has since. I continue to see her at first every 6 months and then every year, and just last time I saw her was, I think, a year or 2 ago, and she's like, "You need to just graduate from my care because you're doing great, and there's nothing I can do for you, and if in the future you need me, call me, but until then, just, consider yourself graduated from my care." So that was pretty amazing to me,
Yeah.
like, wow, that's pretty awesome to have that step on this journey. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been working with a functional doctor fairly recently,
Yeah.
and I've been cautiously optimistic about it. I find it pretty interesting, all the different that at least
Mhm.
mine's trying to do, where you have like the GI tests and then the blood work is extremely extensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never had so much blood taken from me
Yeah.
in my life
Yeah.
outside of maybe a blood
Yeah.
donation, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been interesting, although I would say I'm also running into a similar bump in the road that you described earlier, where some of the supplements that they do prescribe do have
Mhm.
some starch in them.
Mhm.
I think only one of the ones that I have at the moment has starch in it. It's a probiotic, which, from what I
Mhm.
understand, a lot of the capsule probiotics need to have some level of starch in them
Mhm.
to keep the bacteria alive, is my
Mhm.
understanding. But it's been interesting since starting the supplements because there was a little bit of period where the inflammation kind of went up a little bit, and then the
Mhm.
baseline got better, like it overall went lower. And then as I've slowly started stacking more of them in, it seems like the baseline's now kind of hovering its way back up, like maybe things aren't agreeing the most.
Right.
So it does make me wonder if, um, all intent being well, a
Mhm.
lot of functional doctors might underestimate the role of starch in AS in particular, because it
Yeah.
seems like AS is a very starch focused condition where other autoimmune conditions maybe aren't quite as strict on keeping starch out of your diet and just can
Yeah.
follow kind of a generic autoimmune paleo diet.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
from my
it's,
experience, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, and I don't think they're bad intentioned at all,
mm,
but maybe just not understanding. There's so much to learn still in this field, and like I said, I mean, we're all in some ways going by just what we hear or what we read online, which is a little crazy, and we prefer some professional counseling in that. Um, yeah, and you know what? For some people, that does work, and some people can take starchy supplements. I couldn't, but that's something that I feel like everybody kind of discovers on their own what works and what doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to continue. He recommended me do these supplements for at least 3 weeks to see what happens. And
Yep.
similar to your dialogue too, where you're saying, oh, they're like, oh, it might get a little worse before it gets better. It's like, oh yeah, it's kind of normal to get some body aches and stuff that come
Yeah.
with it, but I don't know if he quite understands the level of aches that can be possible if you poke the bear enough times.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So it's going to be an interesting little chapter in this journey. I believe his primary goal is to increase microbiome diversity in the stomach
Yeah.
and try to reduce stomach inflammation, which I think is seems like it makes sense.
Yep. It
Um,
does.
but we'll have to see if the probiotic works. I have a feeling the starch in that might be problematic, and I may also go back to him and suggest maybe we should try just probiotic foods
Right.
instead
And
that
that is
we
what
can
I
control for
switched to.
that.
Yeah, that is what I ended up switching to, which works really well for me. Like sauerkraut and coconut yogurt, and I think those have been totally fine. I have never found a probiotic that works for me. That doesn't increase my level of pain. Um, but again, that's individual, and I agree that every microbiome is different and reacts differently. Every person is different, and so I think part of this journey is just um, the experimenting on yourself, really, in some ways, right?
Yeah,
Getting to know like
it's a
how does
grand
my body,
experiment.
yeah, which is a little bit terrifying in some ways, um, but at the same time also very empowering, and um, we learn so much in that process, and that is worth a lot, I think. Yeah.
Through your healing journey, were exercise, stretching, any other things outside of diet playing a big role for you, or was it pretty much all diet doing the heavy lifting?
I think diet was huge. Honestly, I was just running after little kids all day, so I don't know if that counts as exercise. I mean, I was
Yeah,
lifting babies, twins, I don't know.
yeah,
Honestly, I had no time for any kind of scheduled exercise. So for me, that wasn't really part of the story. I think being active is important. I think, um, especially at the beginning, I had to be super careful because any kind of overdoing it would send me into a flare and it would send me back. Um, and so I I just did some very gentle stretching in the beginning. And then as I started feeling better, um, I was able to go biking, and then I was able to go biking with a bike trailer with my twins in the back, and just
yeah.
and then hiking, and then all of a sudden I was hiking with kids on my shoulders, and so um, I think yeah, with time, I was able to exercise more, but I don't know that it would have gone very well if I'd gone hardcore on exercising. Yeah.
Yeah. But overall, you were never really very sedentary in your lifestyle. Like you're always with the kids, you're always moving around. You're not just sitting
Yeah.
around watching TV for 5 hours or
No, I don't
laying
watch
around.
TV, but sometimes that website of mine does take a lot, out of my body. It can take hours and hours, and I'm not very technically inclined, and so things that take some people probably like 5 minutes take me hours to figure out, so that is all a huge learning experience. So, if anything, it is my website that costs me a little bit in terms of physical, yeah, discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but other than that, I am active and I like it that way. Yeah,
Yeah. I think I've seldomly seen many cases that people are achieving really good results without some level of activity. But it seems like I don't know if it's which one comes first, if it's the diet that kind of unlocks the ability to be more mobile, and then once you start feeling good again, you're like, oh man, I just want to move because I haven't been able to do this in,
for sure.
6 months or
For sure.
longer for a lot of people.
I know there's one point where I was on top of a mountain with my skis on and I was overlooking the valley and I was seriously like, I never thought I would do this again. And here I am with my son on the top of a mountain, ready to ski down a hill. And I was like, that to me, it just felt like such a miracle. Yeah,
It really makes you grateful for the good days that you do get,
for sure.
especially in the beginning when you're looking at it. And I remember when I got my diagnosis, probably the amount of days I could walk without some level of, like hip pain in your glute or just something like
Yeah.
every step's kind of like a little bit of an ache. Running was definitely off the table.
Yeah.
But even just the amount of days I could walk in a month without some level of discomfort coming from that lower back and hip was maybe like one or two a month.
For
We're
sure.
looking at like 3% of the time
Yeah.
walking is an option, and then even running would normally cause some level of discomfort after that. And it's
Yeah.
to even be at a point where it's like, oh, I can, go for a run now, maybe 50% of the time I can walk out the door and go for a run and there's not any discomfort now. It's like, whoa. I mean, that's a staggeringly higher number than what it
Yeah.
was just a year
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. Well, and any kind of healing, it does take time, right? So I mean, at least I do feel that you're treating the cause. I mean, this is where the inflammation starts, and you're by cutting foods out, you are causing inflammation to go away. So I think it's healing, and that can take time. Just like you break a bone, it's not going to heal overnight, right? So this idea of oh, I want instant, anything else in life, we want instant gratification. That's just not how it goes when it comes to healing, I think sometimes. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, just giving it time and just focusing on how you're improving instead of, yeah, there definitely can be still bad days. Yeah.
How was the reaction of your family and friends when you very first started this diet and just this
Mhm.
overall, I guess the life overhaul that happens when you're like, all right, well, if we're going full autoimmune safety lifestyle here, it's like all food must go, can't be, got to try to reduce stress, just everything has to
Mm.
be not perfect, but is as good as you can make it. How did that go?
Well, it was obviously pretty extreme. I had the benefit of doing it during COVID, and so my connection with people was pretty limited. But even when things started to open up again a little bit, um, there's people who understand and there's people who don't understand. And I think the people who have seen me in my pain are more understanding than those who haven't seen that. Um,
Hmm.
there's the thing with AS is that it's kind of hidden, right? Like you can
Yeah.
actually go about life and have nobody know that there's an issue until at 2 a.m. you're dying in bed because you can't breathe and your body is completely just so inflamed and in so much pain.
Yeah.
But nobody really sees that.
You're
So
waking up your partner because you keep rolling over left and right, trying to find one little spot that
yeah,
doesn't cause like burning pain
totally.
just for a couple minutes.
So my husband understood and he supported me every step of the way, for which I'm very grateful. But there's certainly people who feel a little bit offended that I don't eat their food when I go
Hmm.
out to eat, and I bring my own food. Even still, I do that a lot of the time. And yeah, you know what? I think I had to get over that. I'm a bit of a people pleaser, so that was probably one of the harder parts of this whole switch. Just
Yeah.
like my mother-in-law is an amazing cook, and I don't know that she completely understands even now like how extreme the ramifications can be when I do eat starch. And I don't want to offend people by not eating their food, but mostly, I think generally people understand, or when they learn more about AS and how it is like a significantly painful disease, um, and when they see how much I've improved, really, then everybody just kind of deals with it, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I've kind of gotten over what people think of me at this point. Generally, those close to me have been very supportive, though.
Yeah. It's like you said, a lot of people just can't even tell there's something wrong. Most people I suppose nowadays in my close social circle, most people know, especially people that I've had the situation where we'd be eating together come up. Well, then it ends up being pretty obvious because,
Totally.
first of all, they say, oh, why are you eating that? And not this. And then, the whole story comes out. But yeah, most people would look at me and think I'm like, wow, you're like perfectly healthy.
Mhm.
I mean, you're in good shape, like you look fine, but
Yeah,
maybe I'll show up to play. I play a lot of volleyball recreationally,
yeah,
and I'll show up to play, and just some days it's like I don't have a whole lot of spring to my step. It hurts to twist and,
yeah,
do a
yeah,
lot of these movements, and some people be like, oh, Brad's moving slow today, but
yeah,
never even think a thing. Maybe he's tired, but actually it's like, oh no, just
Yeah.
just aching.
Yeah, and it can be very significant for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't had too many overwhelmingly negative responses to the dietary change. Most people don't question it too much. I think like you said, this time of year is one of the hardest with the holidays rapidly coming up. Food is a major part of the holidays.
Yeah.
Visiting family of like my girlfriend, for example, her mom's a lovely cook, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, none of her food is very compliant with what I can eat.
Yeah.
Um, but I think when you zoom out and you see, okay, is one day of being compliant and being a people pleaser going to be worth three, maybe more days of aches and pains and not, just not feeling well?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not. I've even had the debate. So 2 days from now is American Thanksgiving, this Thursday.
Yeah.
Um, and ironically, this year my birthday also falls on that day, so it's two for
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
And
What you gonna do? Party hard?
it's everyone's. We have like 18 people coming. Everyone's gonna bring their own. There's gonna be macaroni and pies and all that kind of stuff. And I was talking to my girlfriend earlier this week, and I was like, what do I do? It's like, do I make an exception? Do I give myself the excuse to, okay, you know what, it's your birthday, it's a holiday, maybe you just try to go for some of the foods that'll be low starch and probably low risk and see what happens. And, I sat on it for a little while and the same thought process came into my head. And I'm like, I'm still kind of deep into elimination. I'm not where I want to be. And even if I don't have a major reaction to any of these things, it's still going to just skew me for the whole another week, basically, on doing future experiments. Because it's like, oh, maybe a couple days later I start feeling stiff. And I'm like, well, I don't know what it came from. And that also means I can't add anything new to,
Yeah.
an already riled up stomach. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's tricky. Fortunately and unfortunately, my family hasn't done a large family get together, so a lot of my family has no idea I even do the diet.
Oh wow.
Actually, just my immediate family. My father knows about it,
Yeah.
my girlfriend, and some close friends, but
Yeah.
I don't share it a ton, because it is also just a lot to explain, especially with new people that you meet.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful or an
Yeah.
earful, I guess, rather.
Yeah. For sure. I
Um,
think my most negative response actually came from a dietitian. I went to see her because I just wanted to make sure that I was hitting all my nutrients when I was eating just chicken and broccoli, which I probably wasn't hitting all the nutrients. But
yeah.
I I went to her and she just said, "You are foolish for what you are doing, and you need to get back on a full a full diet. Follow the food guide and just everything. You have to do the grains, the proteins, dairy, do
Yeah.
it all." And I looked at her, I was like, "I don't think you knew me before I walked into your clinic without a lot of pain." This was when I'd already started to feel a lot better. And and I was pretty convinced that starch free was the way to go. Um, but she's like, you are so foolish and you need to stop this immediately." And I said, "If I go back to everything I was eating before, I'd be crippled all over again." And that is what she
Yeah.
recommended. And that's what she recommended. And I just said, "You know what? I think we're gonna have to agree to disagree. This will we'll just have to part ways because there is no way I'm going back to eating what I was eating before, and that would just completely do me in." So that's that. That's my experience with very well-meaning professionals, and so I feel
Yeah.
like I've done just a lot of this journey on my own, and, so far so good. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of people, especially the success stories that you hear in the
Mhm.
anecdotal cases you hear about, most of the people are people who have tried to go the conventional method to some extent, didn't really have much luck, and then ended up just becoming their, own researcher and going through everything, doing their own personal experiments and just a very long road of, bouncing left and right and left and
For
right,
sure.
ping-ponging your way forward until eventually it's like, okay, I think I kind of have a rough idea of what's happening, and then it all kind of comes together eventually.
I think we all want to be validated by medical professionals, but that's just not always possible, is I think what I came to the conclusion. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think there's such a good intent by nearly all of them, but
absolutely.
it seems like I'm excited for the next 10 to 20 years of medicine, especially with AI and everything that's coming to life. And I just think it's going to be so interesting as we learn to understand more about the stomach and how all of this is starting to express itself, not just in stomach aches, and
Sure.
how, it can express itself as AS or psoriasis or
Yeah.
psychological problems. It seems like an endless list of things we can just trace back to here. And it's going to be so cool to see hopefully how that unravels, and all of a sudden maybe we'll learn how to treat these things much more directly.
For sure.
Maybe we'll be able to go in and get a GI test and then be like, hey, all right, you can't do starch, but you can do this,
Right?
this, and that. Avoid the nuts, avoid the dairy. Nightshades are okay for you though, for some reason, and just
You
save you
know,
a whole lot of the
yeah. I think
experimentation.
I think we're learning the hard way, but at least reaping the benefits of it still.
Holiday season's coming up. Do you have any advice for people approaching maybe their first holiday season on the diet,
Yeah.
or people kind of similar to you, where it's November or October, and you're like, man, I really want to get started with this, but gosh, the social events coming up are pretty big.
Yeah.
Of
Again,
is there
because of
any
COVID.
tricks
Yeah.
you have to that, or any advice you'd have for people that are approaching this time of year and they're thinking about kicking this off?
I mean, I ate a lot of chicken wings because I really love them. So, I mean, find something that you love and just
Not
treat
not
yourself to
fried, I'm
that.
assuming, right?
I put them in the air fryer. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not deep fried, like no
Not deep
batter or
fried.
anything,
No
right?
bad. No, but they were pretty good all the same. Um, and really just treating yourself to other things that are enjoyable to you, whether that is the tea or whether it's, I don't know, like a bath for some people, or I don't know, just different ways that you can treat yourself, I guess. I'm not sure that it will ever be easy. It's hard to see other people eat foods that you really love. And holidays especially are they're just so social, and so it can be difficult. I think just acknowledging that it's difficult, and then also just knowing for yourself what you're trying to accomplish. And it really is just a mind over matter. It sucks. Yes, it does suck. But I want to see the results of this, so I just need to keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the preparation is key
No,
for going into it. Just knowing that, yeah, it's no matter what time of year you do it, it's going to be hard.
totally.
And there's always a holiday, there's always a birthday.
Yeah.
But I suppose, one way to look at it would be it's November 25th. By Christmas, you could be a month in, and
Yeah,
maybe you'll be feeling, hopefully, you'll be feeling much different. But
for
even
sure.
if you're not, you'll still be 4 weeks in rather than starting at day zero. And
Yeah.
that's
I
a long
always
ways on chicken and broccoli.
I always recommend really just starting like you said. I mean, you've got nothing to lose except for if you stay inflamed, you're going to lose mobility. You might get more permanent damage. I mean, it will always be difficult. Um, yeah, it's really a mind game that you have to play with yourself, I think.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately for people who are having AS or similar conditions arising, given the two paths, there's not it's not like there's an easy path and a hard path. It's kind of just there's two hard paths here. You
Yeah,
can choose to either go down the massive dietary experimental route, and hopefully you can find it. That's going to be difficult in its own, but odds are you should get some level of symptom relief, especially if you're coming from a not so good standard American diet. Even if you just cut out the most egregious offenders, you'll probably find that you feel better to some extent. But of
for
course,
sure.
that will be difficult. It's going to take a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
But on the alternative side, not feeling so good and continuing down the progressive path that AS and other conditions can provide is it's also not going to be very easy. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of
And
people lose their mobility in ways that they'll never get back, and sometimes that's ways that prevent them from ever, being able to do some sports or activities again, and
yeah,
that's
for
to
sure.
me that
And
sounds
then
harder.
I agree. And then there is also, of course, the alternative, which is really more mainstream medical, where you go on the biologics. But I think for you and I, when we were first diagnosed, um, we were still pretty young. You're younger than me, but the idea of um, being on those pretty hardcore meds for the rest of your life, I mean, the risks and side effects, that's something to consider, right? So, I mean, everybody needs to choose obviously what works for them, and I'm not saying that diet is the answer for everyone, and I would never expect that, but I do want to encourage people who are considering it, like, it's worth it. There's a lot of improvement to be gained, and I think it is worth pursuing. In the end, a diet change is hard, but I always think what needs to be grieved is the disease and not the diet. So often people are like, "Oh, the diet is so hard," and it is hard.
Yeah.
But the alternative is a disease that's eating you up, and so there's no stopping it. There's no easy out here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Unfortunately, there's no easy out, and
yeah,
I also think some people can become very dogmatic about their approach to remedying like AS and other similar conditions in a way that a lot of people are just all or nothing for it's either okay, you're only going to do the like modern medicine like
yeah,
pharmaceuticals, or you're only going to do the
natural.
like the natural dietary approach.
Yeah,
And I also think there's a lot of room for both out there in the sense that if
yeah,
you're already on the medication and you
yeah,
feel like pretty good,
yeah.
I think there's just it's would be so worthwhile to experiment with the dietary
Yeah,
aspect of
I
it because
agree.
maybe you go from feeling 60% better to 100% better,
Yeah,
and maybe you couldn't come off your meds, or maybe you can even just lower your dose,
yeah,
and that right there could be hugely beneficial for the rest of your life.
for
And,
sure.
some people maybe they get diagnosed very, very late and, they're so immobilized that maybe they just need to go on medication right away. But
Yeah,
I think a lot of people kind of get on medication and they just kind of completely write off the whole nutrition and lifestyle side of it. And it leaves so much on the table for,
absolutely. Yeah. I remember, if I'd had access to medication when I was first diagnosed, you better believe I would have jumped on that. Like
yeah,
it wasn't, I would have chosen that. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but it wasn't available to me. And so I kind of stumbled upon this, and I thank God for that now, where I'm like, man, I'm glad that, medication wasn't available to me, at that point. Um, but even now, there's always this idea of where, like, if ever this doesn't work out, then thank goodness I still have medication in my back pocket, right? So
yeah,
there's really no judgment towards people who, for whatever they choose, everybody, I mean, it's a struggle, it's a battle. And so trying to figure out what works for you, and that may include medication and it may include dietary changes. There's really no judgment. It's really up to each individual how they want to live with a disease and the consequences of how they treat it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few people of course, they're very likely could be a vocal minority too that are in the camp that diet does nothing for the disease progression, like, oh,
Mhm.
you can't cure it. It's a completely gene-based, condition, and, you yourself and many other people are living proof that, there's something going on here, and it seems
Yeah,
like maybe just because you have the gene doesn't necessarily, well, we already know just because you have the gene doesn't mean you develop AS.
for sure. Yeah.
Maybe it's the fuel for the fire, but you don't have a fire without a spark. Something else
Yeah.
needs to take place to get this going. And maybe it is diet, maybe it's a whole list of things that happened to you from when you were a little child all the way till, you're an adult and eventually your first little symptoms start to pop up. Like, how old were you? Do you remember when your first symptoms of AS appeared?
Very.
Do you remember? Like when, if you can think back, like when's the first thing where you're like, ah, that was probably AS just starting.
I yeah, honestly, teenage years. I probably when I was 16, I started having significant like back issues, and I always attributed it to everything else in life. Like I'd been in a car accident, and really that may have contributed. But since then, I I've had issues and always different issues in my body. At one point, it was my wrists or my jaw or everything just hurt all the time. And so I would treat my sore wrist, I would treat my jaw. I never connected the dots that it was all the same disease. But when I started the starch free diet, and even now, it has taken care of all the pain in my body. So the heel pain, I used to have foot pain. I mean, it's all gone. So, I mean, it all shows me that I think it was, probably inflammation related, even
Hmm.
even in the teen years, and from then on, I always lived in pain. So the last 6 or 5 years, I've really lived with less pain than I have in decades before in my life. So I really feel like I've, uh, kind of gotten a new lease on life. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I would say similar to you, mine started around when I was about 18, 17,
Mhm.
18 years old. So I'm 28 now, soon to be
Yeah.
29, and so it's been about a decade. And looking back, it's kind of easy to see like, oh, those first hip pains I got that I just kind of thought were a sports injury, but they just always lingered, always
Yeah.
came so randomly and left so
Yeah.
randomly. And then they switched sides a couple years later for like on a dime too. It's like, oh, it stopped hurting one day on the right and then the next day the left. It's like, what's
Yeah.
such a strange thing to think about, but then you look back at it and you're like, oh, yep, I recognize that. And then, you start kind of t tallying everything up, and it's like, I remember I just kind of had some neck stiffness for a while. I thought maybe it was like a little whiplash, or, did I sleep wrong?
Yeah.
And now I can wake up and I know I'm like, all right, you did something yesterday. What did you eat? What did you
Yeah.
do? Was there
Yeah.
stress? Did something set this off? And it's I think one of the worst symptoms I ever had was did you ever have uveitis? Did you ever have one of the
No,
eye
I did
problems?
not. No, I did not.
I've only had it once.
Okay.
I feel so bad for anyone who gets it chronically. It is brutal.
Mhm.
I would never never recommend experiencing it. Fortunately, I'll knock on my desk here. It's never come back, which has been a blessing.
Yeah.
I would much rather take the some back sniffus or some hip pain over the
Yeah.
eye attack. The eye needs to stay off limits for
Yeah.
the immune system.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing to look back and just see all the things that kind of connect. Even for me, I've had like changes in my skin from changing my
Mhm.
diet, which is interesting. Going from kind of chronically like dry hands or like some
Mhm.
dry feet, just kind of stuff that you just thought, oh, I have dry skin. And then you kind of notice when you come out of a flare and everything's getting a little better, it's like, oh, even my skin looks a little bit better. Like, what's going
Yeah.
on here? It's just
Yeah.
how intertwined things is incredible.
What I thought was bizarre is, I mean, I'm a very fair redhead, and I get burnt very easily in the summertime. That summer, when I was only eating broccoli and chicken and olive oil, I didn't get one sunburn, and I never wore sunscreen, and I was always out in the sun. And there
Oh,
was
wow.
apparently it's got something to do with olive oil, like healthy oils. But I didn't burn at all, which was mind blowing to me to see just the impact of diet on even things like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I haven't done extensive research into, but I do remember reading a couple, I don't know if anecdotal cases and also just people theorizing that there's something going on with the polyunsaturated fats we're getting in seed oils coming into our system and potentially increasing our rates of burning. Like
Yeah,
there's quite a few cases of people out there that actually talk about like, oh, I cut out seed oils or just processed foods in general,
yeah,
and I don't burn as much as I used to. And I'm
yeah,
like, wow, that's so fascinating. It's like,
yeah, it really is.
what's going on there? I mean, I'm not very well versed in the area, of course, but it's so fascinating to hear about it and be like, huh, maybe something else is going on there too.
Yeah,
How many layers are there on this onion that we just keep
yeah,
finding more?
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
But what about starch-free feasting? What um what drove you to create that? And how's that going? Where did that come from?
I think when I first started, I was in so much pain. I was so tired, and I was always like, "Oh my goodness, there's so much information out there, and it takes so much time to research it all. There's just so much reading to do." And I did run up on a few websites that had pretty like inspiring information and even just starch-free foods that kept me going when the going was tough. When I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'll never eat anything delicious again." I just go to that website and I'd be inspired and think, "Oh, maybe this can be a long-term thing and maybe it won't always feel like I'm so deprived." And so I think it was just going to that website that kind of gave me hope when I was feeling a little bit hopeless um and so when I started, oh no, there was one point where I went to, this was a naturopath. I was looking for someone who could help me and I was feeling terrible and I found a naturopath and it looked like he could help me and he took me in for like a free consultation and told me all about the wonderful things he could do for me and all the success stories. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, here's my ticket. This is it."
Yeah.
And then on my way out the door, I got this folder that had like the fee schedule in it. And it was just far beyond what I could afford. And and it was really terrible to live with pain
Yeah.
and then to know that if I had enough money then maybe I could feel better. But if I didn't have the money, then too bad. It was such a miserable feeling. And I was like,
Yeah, it's like they're
I need
holding
to
you
tell them.
captive. You're not going to be out of your painful cage unless you hand
Yeah,
over
that was
thousands of dollars.
absolutely. Yeah. And it was just like, it was 10,000 bucks. That was the first installment. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm not doing that. And I was sad and I was angry. And I was like, if ever I figure out the key to what makes me feel better, then I just need to share that freely with the world because I never want other people to feel this misery of pain and then not being able to afford to feel better. And then the starch-free diet worked for me and I was like, well, I need to share this with the world. I was
This is
pretty
it.
passionate about it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not technically inclined, so it's been a struggle. And even more recently, I've had a few issues with the website, and part of me is like, oh, I just want to throw in the towel. And so now I'm actually working on a book because I'm like, if the website falls through, then I still want to have even just for my own sake, I want to have a record of well, my recipes, but also just my story. Like this is in
Yeah.
some ways I'm looking back on this last 6 years and I'm like, that's a whole big part of my life. And I kind of want to preserve it. It's a little bit special to me. And so now I'm working on a book to try and really just encourage people and offer hope, um, which can be so hard when you're in the throes of AS and you're in so much pain and you're
Yeah.
too tired to read all the websites. And so I wanted to compile it all. I wanted the success stories, um, the starch free recipes. I wanted it all in one place so that someone who was desperate like I was could just use that as a starting point, I guess. Just a source of hope. So really that's all it is. Yeah.
Well, that's incredible. And I would imagine it's pretty hard to quantify the amount of people that have probably at least passed through your website and found some level of inspiration or taken a few recipes, and that's been what's kept them on the diet. That's what's kept them from
Mhm.
slipping off.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
imagine that must be extremely rewarding to also just feel as well,
Yeah.
especially when
Yeah.
when you know what it's like to be at the beginning and you're like, oh man, like I know how bad that was to just give you a little bit of relief. Like I would have killed for a little bit of relief for so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I think it's a real honor that people reach out to me, and it's really when people send me a message through my website and just reach out and looking for hope and someone who can understand. It's like, well, it's I think it's a real honor, and it's also just exciting to be able to offer them a success story. So it's really, it's meaningful. Yeah. So it's really a pay it forward kind of thing for me. Um, and and it is really exciting when I get messages from people who have been affected by it, who have benefited from it. So that's always encouraging. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's that's one of the reasons I wanted to start doing longer form conversations just like this one is I
yeah,
was like, it's such an easy landscape to feel hopeless in.
yeah,
And the amount of hopelessness I see just going into, maybe even just like the general like ankylosing spondylitis Facebook group and other
yeah,
forums that maybe aren't so diet focused. It's
mhm,
just the overall feeling is just like it's normally just it's not necessarily everyone being negative, but it's just it feels so glum. And normally it's post after post of what do I do? I'm in pain. How do I get stability? Going in for another surgery. Wish me luck.
yeah,
And I feel like the success stories don't really get as much of a spotlight as they could. And
mm,
I know for me, even just reading some of the success stories in the No Starch Facebook group, on your website as well. Sometimes on the hardest days, that's what gets you through. It's seeing,
definitely.
someone else made it across this. It's not impossible.
Yeah,
And, once you see it's possible, all of a sudden, it just unlocks so much more discipline and hope that, okay, maybe today is just a bad day
sure.
and tomorrow will be a little better. Maybe tomorrow won't be better, but maybe a couple days from now it'll be better. And
Mm,
we can zoom out, try to look at the big picture and see that we're getting a little bit better every day. And that's a heck of a
sure.
lot better than zooming out and seeing that you're just on a steady decline.
Yeah, and really, I mean, when I first got diagnosed, it felt like a life sentence a little bit. It's like,
Yeah.
well, this is your diagnosis. There is no cure, but don't worry, we have biologics. And I was just like, wow, how is that good news? I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose it is really great news for some people, but to me, it just felt like, yeah, it felt like a life sentence. And so there is a heaviness that comes with that. And so it's not surprising. And I mean, you go to those Facebook pages and you read stories of people who are uh, losing their jobs and going for surgeries and all because of
Yeah.
this. And so when I first got diagnosed, that's kind of you go to those Facebook pages and you read that and you're like, oh my goodness, this is my future, and it does become extremely depressing. And so yes, I just I feel passionate about spreading hope that that relief is possible and that
Yeah.
um, even people who don't do the starch-free diet, there's better days than the ones when you're diagnosed or yeah.
Yeah. There's hope at the end of the, or I guess not at the end of the, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
And yeah, like you said, unfortunately, normally when you get your diagnosis, it normally comes from a rheumatologist or, your primary care physician, whoever you're working with to go through this detective work. And unfortunately, they're not wrong in a certain extent. The textbook is, it's we don't have a definitive cure for it. So
yeah,
unfortunately, all they can really do is just damage control to the best of their
right,
abilities. And, I remember when I got my diagnosis, it's like, well, we know what it is, but unfortunately, there's no cure to this, but we can treat it with, we can try to treat your symptoms and make you feel somewhat better, and hopefully you can live a somewhat normal life. And I remember just talking to my primary care doctor, and I was like, what does life look like with this? Am I gonna live a full life? And she's like, well, yeah, you should live. It shouldn't hurt your lifespan too much. And I was like, oh, well, that's good. But like, what do I do? And she's like, well, You've all she was able to prescribe was the meloxicam, and then eventually my rheumatologist was able to physically able to prescribe biologics, but unfortunately that's about the end of the options there, and it seems like there's a decent bit of options to blend different medications together, but it also seems like that just becomes an infinitely complex puzzle as now you're balancing like, oh, I'm having this negative side effect from this thing. How do I balance it out with another thing? And then now how do I balance that? And it just goes all goes all over.
And it can make the future feel very long. Like, okay, great. So my lifespan's the same, but I'm not even 30 and I'm living with this amount of pain. So somehow this body I'm in has to last for a regular lifespan, but it feels miserable. So
Yeah.
I think just the reality of that is like that's it's yeah, part there are days when we're like make this end. It's really awful, right? And so yeah.
Yeah, I remember sometime in the last year I had the thought is that I was sitting there and I was like, this I guess now I know what it's like to feel around 100 years old to some
Yeah.
extent. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there like, man, I don't want to know what it feels like to be 200. If it gets worse than this, I don't want to know about it.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I really don't. So definitely fortunate that I'm not feeling 100 anymore. I don't feel 28 yet, but
You'll get
we're
there.
yeah, we're heading backwards at least a good bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think last question I had for you, if you could say one thing to your past self when you got diagnosed, whenever you walked out of that office and
Mm.
had your life sentence, what would it be? What would you tell yourself back then when it all just began?
Yeah, just that there was more hope than what was offered to me in that office that with my it was my family doctor who told me about my diagnosis. Just that it felt really hopeless, but things have turned out much better. So I think when you hear the words, you have a disease and there's no cure, that can feel really disappointing. And I think so for me, just the idea that there is hope and it doesn't have to be as bad as what the doctor says right when you're diagnosed.
Yeah.
Yeah. that-
Yeah, I think at that moment, what everybody needs is just a little bit of hope.
Yeah. Totally.
One of the most soul-crushing moments there is when they tell you we don't know how to, we can't fix it.
Yeah. For sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of hope goes a long way in those dark times.
Yeah. So really, I think that for me, that was and also one more thing is just to learn, like really do research. So yes, um, doctors absolutely give you whatever information they have with the best intentions. But there's so much knowledge to be gained, and you really need to be your own like health advocate, um,
Yeah,
and take responsibility for making sure that you're getting the best care that you need to get, whether that is mainstream medical or natural care. It doesn't really matter,
yeah,
but don't wait for other people to solve your problem for you. Just go and learn about it. And
yeah.
I
Don't
think
be a
there,
passenger.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So those are the two things, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Take control of what you're doing. Be systematic.
Yeah.
If you go down the elimination diet route, be scientific with it.
Yeah.
Do one thing at a time, and
Yeah.
some things will work, some things won't. Did you did you have a rhyme or reason so once you graduated from chicken and broccoli, did you have a rhyme or reason on how you picked what you added next? Was it just kind of what sounded like it would taste good, or
I
like
started
how'd you
with
work them back in?
Yeah, you know what? I started with what would be the most safe. So like herbs, which I probably should have never taken out, honestly. Um,
Yeah,
and then from there, I just looked at the recipes that I really hope to make and just slowly, honestly, like almond flour for me or any kind of nuts and seeds were huge for me
yeah,
to add in. And so that's what I tried, or even just like a salad with tomatoes. So the nightshades I tried to add in. And then it was really awesome when I learned I could have coconut and, fruit became so honestly, it was very slow and very methodical and very systematic, but really the things that I most craved for, and that also allowed for the, uh, most variety, I guess. Yeah, that spanned across the board. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think were there any foods that you had that your body rejected when you started doing or
Mm.
like kind of coming out of elimination and adding those new things? Did you have a lot of like rejections or for the most part were they pretty positive responses?
Yeah, you know what? In the beginning, I think there were some that my body didn't really agree with. But now, the longer I've stuck with it, like even now I can do dairy again, and I couldn't do that after I first reintroduced it. So I think there's still healing happening. And as the gut heals, I think it's just able to tolerate more. So um yeah, there were a few setbacks, but I think even now there's I don't do starch. Actually, even starch in very limited quantities have been okay for me now. Um, so mostly I'm not very restricted in many ways anymore besides starch. Yeah. I mean, seed oils, like this unhealthy processed food, I stay away from because I
Y-
don't think it
Yeah,
does me any favor. But yeah, yeah,
but yeah, as long as you keep it to whole foods that are
yeah,
well made, even a little bit of starch here and there doesn't seem to
yeah,
be nearly the trigger that it once
yeah,
was. Do you get many symptoms these days, or I guess like you said, you kind of forget you had AS for
yeah,
some days
yeah.
at least, right?
Yes, most days I forget I have AS. Um, the other day, a snowstorm rolled through, and about a day before it rolled through, I was like, "Something's wrong. I don't think it's something I ate. So what's going on?" And then, I mean, it's still a form of arthritis, right? And you often
Yeah,
hear of people with arthritis saying that they can tell the weather better than the weatherman, and I do kind of feel that way a little bit sometimes. So when the weather changes, I think hormones have something to do with it or stress. If I'm not active enough, if I spend too long a day in front of the computer working on my website, I'll feel something. But honestly, in general, it's nothing like what it used to be. So
yeah.
it's very manageable. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I think that's the end goal for probably just about everybody, right? Is
Yeah.
to wake up and not have AS be one of the first things you think about that day is
So
kind of
true.
just like a return to childhood almost, if you, or
Yeah.
at least a return to whatever before you didn't have it.
Or even just for me, when I go to bed now, just knowing that I will be able to sleep through and wake up because I'm rested, not because of pain. It's still I don't take that for granted, so, yeah, you become very grateful after you've kind of walked the journey of AS, yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
3 a.m. wake ups and
Yeah.
not a single comfortable spot to be found are,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh man, yeah, that's every night I'm grateful for a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think once you start really learning your triggers, they become a lot more common, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Every
Yeah.
now and then I'll misstep and I'll pay for it, but at least those are a lot farther apart
Yeah.
than they ever were
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. And you learn from it all, and so yeah, it's all part of the process. Yeah.
Yeah, I almost have adopted a mindset that in the long run, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. You
Yeah.
know, that obviously it's very painful, it's very difficult, but assuming we can come out the other end of it feeling better and with a healthier outlook on how we decide what we put in our body, how we treat our body, and also just a completely revamped gratitude for every day that you wake up just feeling good. I
Yeah.
think it's, maybe if it takes 5, 6 years of your life to really master it, hopefully shorter, but
Yeah.
however long it takes you, I think maybe it'll set up that next 30, 40 God bless you. Hopefully you get 70 more years of life.
Mhm. Yeah,
And those 70 years are the best things, you ever could have
yeah,
had.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
So,
and I mean, really, I do think I'm actually healthier now than I was before, which is so ironic to say because I've been diagnosed with AS, and so you don't think of that as healthy, but in terms of, yeah, the foods I eat now, I mean, it's
yeah.
really what makes up your body, and I think I am healthier now than I ever was before.
What
Yeah.
a crazy thought to think you'd be healthier after you got diagnosed with an inflammatory arthritis.
I know, it's really bizarre, and I really don't prefer to be too crunchy, like, I don't prefer this, I don't do healthy foods just because I want to be healthy. My motivator is still pain and managing pain and all that.
Yeah.
I don't wanna be known as, like, the crunchy mama just because I wanna eat healthy, but
Yeah.
it's just I've experienced, obviously, the benefits, so that's a motivator. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the strongest motivator I've ever encountered, and I
Yeah.
would say the dietary changes are probably one of the hardest things I've had to do in my life, just
Yeah.
from a never-ending standpoint of, it's every day, 24 hours a day. It doesn't change.
Crazy
And
self-control.
yeah,
Yeah.
and some people, like my girlfriend, be like, I'm amazed how disciplined you are with this. And I'd love to say it's all just out of the goodness of my heart, but I'll tell you, there's something I'm running away from most of the time, and I don't want it to catch me.
Yeah.
And
I
that's a strong
understand that.
motivator.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But other than that, though, heck, I think that's about all the questions I
yeah.
wrote down. It's been such a lovely time talking to you.
Yes,
Wonderful to meet
thank
you
you.
as
That was
well over
yeah,
Zoom. Put
thank
more
you.
of a
Sorry,
face with all
we
the
kind of
messages
went
and
on.
posts.
We went on for a little while, so you might have to do a lot of cutting there. But
Oh, that's
anyway,
fine.
yeah, good. It's really nice to have chatted and to actually see who I've been chatting with, and to see that
Yeah,
you're improving. And so it's that's been really good.
we're
Thank
getting
you.
there, one experiment
Yeah.
at a time.